Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Love Needs No Words. He's a former soldier, author, and extreme adventurer and was awarded an MBE for his services to charity last year. Jordan Wylie, who is also a hunter on the popular TV show Hunted, was diagnosed with the condition ADHD last year. ADHD or attention deficit disorder affects people's behaviours. They may seem restless, have trouble concentrating, and may act on impulse, and it also can be linked with autism. Jordan's here to share his experience of living with the condition. Jordan, thank you so much for fitting us into your mad schedule.
No, absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
So, finding out later in life that you've got this diagnosis, what was it like sort of living with the condition?
Well, I guess I didn't know about it. It was just my normal was just my normal in many ways. I never till I was diagnosed, it wasn't even something I thought of. I just thought that, I knew I was a little bit different in the sense that I've always been very hyper focused, but only on things that I'm really interested in. If something interests me, I'm an all or nothing type guy, and that is the negative to that is when I'm at school and things like that didn't interest me, I was staring out the window thinking I want to be anywhere else but here.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one because for me it's a bit like a superpower I've come to learn, in the sense that if you really hone your focus onto something, I'm normally, touch wood, quite successful at things that I put my mind to, and always have been, but at the same time, the things that haven't really interested me that are important, like education, as a growing up, I've really struggled with. But at the same time, without sort of digressing and going on different paths, which is what my brain does anyway, I sort of learned that there are lots more ways to learn than just sat in a classroom. In fact, most of the best learning I've done has been through travel and adventure. The best lessons in life for me haven't come from reading out of textbooks or doing exams. They've come from immersing myself in different cultures, trying different foods, traveling to, over 100 countries across all 7 continents. That's been an amazing education for me. And I believe that's more powerful than sitting in a classroom. But at the same time, what I don't want to say is that education's not important, because I've gone back to education as an adult, and I've actually, even though I left school with no GCSEs and or anything at all, I've gone back and done all my GCSEs, all my A levels, a foundation degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, and gone through the whole spectrum. But when I did it as an adult, I was doing it in subjects that interested me, like security as a soldier, risk management, not, English, maths, and science sort of thing. So I was really keen on the subjects, which, because I was interested, I was actually able to excel at them. So it's all in there. It's just, for me, how do you unlock all that sort of potential that is in a lot of young people as well? Because if you're not interested in a school classroom, typically you're in detentions, you're disruptive, you're kicked out of the class, you might even be expelled. And I don't blame any teachers for that. It's just because they've got a job to do. They're being held accountable by targets and results, and they don't need someone like me who's disrupting their orthodox way of teaching, which is normally 30 people or whatever in a class, one person at the front, a whiteboard or blackboard or whatever it was, and that's how we learn, or that's how the system thinks that we're all going to learn. Which is, I think, as we've evolved, certainly over the last decade, we've seen things like presidents of countries. We've seen, like, the best entrepreneurs in the world have come from very different pathways than not the usual highly educated, lots of qualifications. And yeah, I think whether it's adventure, whether it's politics, whether it's elite level sport, there's lots of people with neurodiverse conditions and things that really actually excel but only when they're given the sort of opportunities, I would say, and the environment to flourish in. Because I think one thing I've learned in my life is you're always a product of your environment. It's like, if you surround yourself with negative people, you typically have a negative experience. And the same for learning and growth and development. If you're in a school that doesn't really want to harness whatever your challenges are, or drill into them and try and solve some of the problems, then unfortunately you're going to be like me. You're going to be disruptive. You're going to be sent outside the classroom every 10 minutes. You're going to be a teacher's worst nightmare, because I couldn't just sit still. I just wanted to kick a ball or climb a tree, or, I don't know, go camping or whatever. But that wasn't what school was good for 30 years ago, and probably isn't that good for now, dare I say. Although we've definitely progressed with, I love seeing things like forest schools. I see a lot of these in primary schools. I think they're amazing. I think they're brilliant, and actually getting kids outside, especially kids with neurodiverse challenges or conditions or whatever it might be, that's how they start to flourish, because they learn how to do things like negotiate risk, like whether it's climbing a tree or crossing a river or whatever it might be. There's so many other better ways to learn through things like the great outdoors than just sitting in a boring old classroom.
Yeah. I can actually really relate to some of what you're saying, because I really found school difficult to concentrate. And I found that I ended up being quite disruptive as well. And I'm really interested in what you were saying about like the negative messaging, because do you think that impacted your confidence throughout your school years? Or not really?
Maybe not really, but I think it impacted my self-belief from an academic perspective. I was always told that I was pretty useless in a classroom. So I believe that. And what I think it does for a young person is it really creates a fixed mindset where you start to think, well, if I'm not very good at it, that's just the way I am, and that's the way I was born. If that's being fed to you all the time, for 8 hours a day in a school environment, that you're not very good at maths, so don't worry about it, sort of thing. You start to think that, but actually, I'm actually a lot of the subjects. So like STEM subjects is what we call them in schools these days: the science, the tech, engineering, maths. I'm actually really good at those now, because STEM is in all my adventures. If I'm gonna, I don't know, row across a stretch of water, I need to know time, distance, speed. I need to know calorie intake. I need to know about the marine life I might encounter. Engineering, how's my boat going to float? What's the buoyancy? Technology, I need GPSs everywhere I go. I'm satellite comms. All those things are lessons and school subjects, but they're taught in a very different way in school. It's just theoretical. But when you apply them in a practical manner in your everyday life, and you actually realize, bloody hell, that's quite useful to know, actually, and I can use that on, even if I'm going to the shop or if I'm doing my adventure or whatever it might be, then that made sense to me, and I'm interested now because you've got my attention. Whereas just reading about, Jack and Jill, and they went down to the local supermarket, and you've got to work out how many pennies were left out. That was boring the hell out of me.
Has it had like a negative impact throughout your life that sort of led to you getting the diagnosis? Or
Absolutely. As much as it's a superpower, it's a massive weakness. Well, I say it's a massive weakness. It was a massive weakness until I knew I had it, and I understood it, because then it allowed me to become very aware of it then, and make better conscious decisions. Where I think the biggest challenge for me personally would have definitely been one in the early years growing up in school, where I didn't take much interest or notice, but in adult life would be in relationships, as in, sort of love relationships, that sort of thing. I think because I'm so hyper focused, that has made me sort of have tunnel vision on whatever it is I'm doing, and it's led to a lot of neglect to the people around me, because I'm so like in the zone. I'm like, to them it would look like he just takes me for granted. He's just a workaholic. He doesn't care about his family, whereas it's not the truth. The truth is that I'm just so focused on the task that I need to do everything, give it 100%, and it's cost me a lot of good relationships. I've never been a cheat or anything like that, or someone who's been disloyal, but I have. When I reflect back, I've been very selfish with my time, which is the most precious thing, really, because I will give 100% of my time to my work. And maybe I'm a bit of a workaholic, and maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but I love work. I love getting excited about projects, and I love trying to deliver them. And typically, I think having the ADHD, it's made. I'm a big believer in backing yourself, even when the odds are stacked against you. I sort of like thrive on that. Well, people saying you can't do something, and or something like that's never been done before. I really like go, well, no, it's just no one's done it yet. It doesn't mean it can't be done. And I probably, on reflection, I think some of that has got to be part of this makeup of me from, neurodiversity and things. I think because I truly believe that we can achieve anything, and I preach that to young people, regardless of what their social status is, neurodiverse background is, or educational background, experience. I believe that it's not a cliche. I think if you want something and you're prepared to work, you can get it. But yes, of course, there'll be, I don't want to say sacrifices, because that sounds, I've always think when you think of sacrifices, and I've learned this in my relationships, when you say, well, I sacrifice, one of the things you would hear a lot in relationships, and especially in mine. Sorry, I've just got my dog trying to chew my arm up here. I said before this, he doesn't chew. He's like an attention seeker who just wants all, he's like me, he wants all the attention. Get down.
He's met his match.
Yeah, I've met my matching little hunter. No, good boy,
him.
get down. So yeah, sorry. I was, where was I going then? I was saying that I've lost my trail of thought now.
You were talking about how you believe, like you talk to children and other people about ways to make, like, not setting themselves boundaries, but if they think that they can do something, then they can
yeah,
achieve
absolutely.
it.
Oh, sorry, relationships as well. I think with relationships, like, yeah, I think I've been quite selfish when I reflect back, but actually the reality is I've just been so focused because I've always, one of the things, sorry, that was what I was saying. One of the things you would often see in a relationship with two people in a relationship would be like, I'd often would say things like, well, I'm sacrificing, I'm going away for 4 weeks to work, so I'm sacrificing that so I would justify it by saying, because I can build us a better future, I can earn more money, and we can have a nicer house and a nicer life. But when you say sacrifice to anyone, what I've learned is there's a lot of like negative connotations to the word sacrifice, because there's almost an element of resentment when you use the word sacrifice. Like, so I sort of changed that whole perspective on sacrifice, and actually what it is, it's just a choice, isn't it? You have chosen to go away for a month. I didn't see my daughter for the last 4 weeks, and some people would say, well, that's terrible, you haven't seen your daughter for 4 weeks. And I'm like, but my job and my life and my fulfillment comes from leading expeditions around the world. So do I sacrifice that to go and be a better dad, or then do I have a lot of resentment because I'm basically doing jobs that I don't want to do, don't give me any fulfillment back in my life? And I've really tried to change that and reframe that. But for me, whether it's selfish, whether it's part of my DNA, I thrive on doing things that I love and enjoy, and I believe that my family get a better me if I'm doing things that I love and enjoy. And it's like any relationship or family; it's hard to get the balance right. We've all got careers that we wanted to pursue or don't, and whatever it is, and you've got to find what works for you. And I think, I have a girlfriend now, and because she's so career driven and so focused, actually it works quite well for me, because she's in her own zone all the time doing whatever she's worrying about. She's not worrying about what I'm doing. Whereas a lot of my previous relationships have been more family type partners. And I'm not saying that she isn't, and that, whatever, but that they're more focused on, I want a loving home family that I want to keep together. And perhaps their career paths aren't as driven, in their professional lives. And there's no right or wrong to either of those approaches, but you've got to find what works for you in a relationship. I don't know where I'm going with this, actually. I don't know where I'm going with it.
No, it's a good point, because I think you can go through life and you can act a certain way, and it doesn't make sense until you have a diagnosis now, and now you can make sense of it in your head. You understand why you act a certain way.
I'm more aware of it, and that's the biggest thing, because it's not changed anything that I do really, or changed me in any way, but because I'm aware of it. Like, one of the things that I know I do a lot, and I'm very hyper aware of it now, is I would finish someone's sentence when they're talking to me. They'll be talking, but my brain is already into the next phase of the conversation. Get on with it. Yeah, and I want to race forward, and if you're not aware of that, like I now see myself doing it, and I stop myself, and I think, God, I must come across so rude to that person whose sentence I've just cut out or finished in a group of people who are having a chat over a beer. But now I can stop myself doing it, because I know that it's a trait of mine, that it's a terrible trait. So there's little things like that. And, things like, I've got a very addictive personality, and I guess that links into the hyper focus, that if I'm doing something, it's getting 100% of me. I'm an all or nothing guy. I'm either not getting involved or I'm doing it to the extreme, whatever it is. And I think another thing that I do a lot when I look back, and what the diagnosis taught me, was that I'm very an impulsive decision maker. If I like an idea, or I I get it. I'm on it. I'm doing it. I'm like, people are like, well, do you not want to go away and think about that or talk to your family or speak to some? No. If I say I'm doing it, we're going. I'm doing it, and I can make that decision. I'm not saying it's always the right decision. Sometimes it bites me, but that's the way I'm wired. That I like go with gut instinct, gut feeling. Yeah, and it's sometimes landed me in trouble or made the wrong decision, but generally it's been like a bit of a superpower as well to act on gut instinct and feelings.
Yeah, definitely. And
so
going
much
back
of what you're saying is relating to. I'm sitting there thinking,
Kirsty's like, hold on a minute.
I make a lot of mistakes though as well. I should, caveat all that. I constantly, but I'm never. One thing that I say to kids a lot is like, you should always embrace failure. You should always never be scared to fail or never be scared to give something a go, because normally the worst thing that can happen is you learn something new. Yes, you might feel a bit embarrassed or a bit rubbish that you didn't achieve it, or but it's very short term, and the growth that you get from anything that fails is immense. And sometimes you've got to be an adult to understand that, and it's hard for children to see failure as an opportunity for growth. But all the things that I've got wrong, whether it's in relationships, whether it's on adventures, whether it's business, whatever it is, the greatest lessons have come from me getting things tragically wrong, especially in relationships. I'm always learning. And I think one of the things I've learned, going a bit off topic maybe, is that you have to own whatever your mistakes are. You've got to take full responsibility for them, because I think a lot of us, I certainly did for years, we would hide away from them. It's very easy to be a victim in this world. I've got lots of challenges where I don't really see ADHD as a challenge, if I'm honest. I see it as a positive in a lot of ways. But things like my mental health, I've struggled a lot with things like depression and anxiety, which have caused me major problems and challenges. So you've got to take responsibility for the things like this that you've got wrong. You've got to be prepared to acknowledge when you're not feeling good, or you're not feeling right, or you need to talk to someone, because I've also been that person who's kept it in my head for weeks, months, and it ends up being a bit of a disaster, and it all comes crashing down in the end if you don't talk to people. But I think for young people growing up, I think they have a much more challenging world than we've ever had with social media and all this digital online world that we're in. I think that kids get a tough time, actually. We all, I hear phrases like this snowflake generation and kids aren't what they used to be, and all these not helpful phrases bandied around. We see it a lot with the military, where they say that, you always hear the expression from the old boys, not like it used to be in my day, and all that sort of stuff, which is very, very typical of what you'd hear of somebody. But I think we have very different challenges today as for young people than we've ever had before, with mental well-being, mental health, and neurodiversity, but social media, which doesn't help any of those challenges and conditions that people and young people face. I think it things like tragically suicides, things like bullying, things like all mental health, anxiety, depression, all those sorts of things are things that have almost like been blown up even more as a result of social media, almost to like epidemic levels. The amount of the amount of families that I meet that have lost children through online, bullying or whatever it might be is incredible, really. It's very tragic in many ways.
They're just exposed to so much. And for whatever reason, if the wrong things end up in their path through social media, there's no break from it at all, is there? Was there a pivotal moment for you that made you seek out a diagnosis?
Yeah, do you know, actually, a lovely lady a counsellor, a therapist, she was, I came out of a relationship about, I don't know, about 18 months ago, to someone who I was engaged to, someone who I, in my head was the love of my life. I was going to marry. And anyway, I let her down by being a rubbish partner, I guess, by not cheating or doing anything purposely hurtful, but just being away, being very selfish. And I came home one day and she decided that she was moving out. And I never really got that closure of like, there was never like a big row and a breakup, and I just got a phone call saying I've left, and that was like after like nearly 5 years, and still to this day, 18 months later, I never got there was never a big, that was it was just a phone call. And it really like sent me into a crazy spiral of depression of not, why has this happened to me, what could I have done? And obviously I was trying to sort it out, and she was not interested, and all this sort of stuff. And I think because I never got any closure, it sent me a bit mental and, crazy. Like I was like so depressed from it. And then I was going to like therapy and counseling and all these different things with my mental health. And the lady, the counselor, one of the therapists that I was seeing, she says, Jordan, have you ever been sort of assessed for ADHD? And I was like, no. I said, people have mentioned it over the years, but not really, no. And she says, well, I'm qualified in ADHD or whatever the qualification would be, what she'd had. And she said, I think you should go and get assessed because I'm pretty 99.9% certain that you've got ADHD. She says, everything that you do in your life, it screams out to me. And I didn't think anything of it at first. And then anyway, I was seeing this counselor for like another 10 sessions and it would come up every time. And she'd give me like lots of little tests to do and things. And then I thought I better go and get this checked out. And then I went to the NHS and the waiting list is like ridiculous. It's like years and they were not interested really. And even as a former soldier veteran, I thought I might be able to get some kind of fast track, but they was not interested. So I had to go private actually, and it cost a lot of money. It cost me like thousands to get the diagnosis. But and as I say, it didn't really change anything, but it allowed me to understand myself and become much more aware of when I'm doing, things like impulsive decisions, when I'm talking over people, when I'm hyper focused and I need to chill out and turn the phone off for a couple of hours to engage in a dinner or a meal or whatever I sort of just an awareness really that has been really helpful. And I think, if I'm honest, it's probably helped other people more than it's helped me, because I'm a better, I think, not that I'm a different human, but I would come across as a much better and more empathetic, more engaging person in social situations. So I don't think it's probably done a lot for me, the diagnosis, but I think my family and others would say you're a lot better for being diagnosed because you're more aware, I think.
Yeah. You've talked about military a few times there. So for people that don't know you were in the army for over 10 years since leaving. You're known now for your incredible adventures you set for yourself, including running a marathon in the Antarctica in 2021. Do you think your ADHD, you've talked about it slightly, but do you think they've helped with these like various challenges that you've set?
Well, I think it goes back to that hyper focus because, at the moment, for example, I'm literally 4 weeks away from launching a big expedition, which it's costing around £100,000 to deliver this expedition, which will go live in January, which is a phenomenal amount of money to try and, and I'm not a salesman, but I have to take up all these different roles, like a marketeer, like a salesperson, like, and actually the adventure bit is right at the end. And that's the fun bit which I do, but I do all these other roles, which have to engage audiences to try and get them to support me and back me, and brands and companies. And people say you won't be able to raise, even recently, you won't be able to raise, even my partner said that's a lot of money to try and go and get to go and support a crazy adventure of yours. And I said, yeah, but I'll find it. And she's like, yeah, but how do you know you'll find it? And because I will, because I'm not going to stop until I get it. And not only that, I'll find the right company with the right values that want to support me for the right reasons to hopefully inspire young people. And I found it and I've got it. And it took me about 3 weeks, which was longer than I thought. But I was going back to like, how can you convince the world to believe in you if you don't believe in you? That's what I would say. And it goes back to backing yourself. If you've got a dream or a goal as a young person, you've got to wake up every day and live and breathe that goal, and be. I don't want, like, when I say hyper focused, I don't want anyone to ever think that's a negative, because for me, it's like a relentless pursuit of whatever your goal is. It's like, I don't have plan Bs because I'm so focused that we're going to make plan A happen. So people go, what if it doesn't get it? I'm like, well, I'm never even looking at that because I'm going to make it happen. And I think that is definitely to do with the ADHD, because it don't even enter my brain. I'm so tunnel vision channeled on the prize or whatever it is. But that's where it is a superpower, because I will make things happen. And I'm definitely far from being the best or the fittest or the fastest. And there's a much more talented people than me who maybe don't get the opportunities that I get. I'm a normal, regular soldier from a normal unit. I've not been in the special forces. I've not been in any elite regiments or anything like that. I'm just a normal guy, a council estate kid from Blackpool. But I believe in myself and I back myself, and I'm relentless if I've got a goal, and I'll make it happen. And I think that definitely is from a sort of neurodiversity perspective. That's helped me a lot, I think.
Yeah.
You mentioning about your family and your upbringing, obviously they didn't know that you had ADHD, although you've said that, you know, people have asked you questions over the years or flagged it. Your family have presumably supported you over the years for you to develop into the person that you are today. There'll be a lot of people listening whose children have ADHD or have potential ADHD. How did your family support you over the years?
Yeah, well, my family are amazing. My parents, again, you know, both very humble, working class. My father was in the Royal Marines, and but they were always I still think they're very different than me, because they were more like the ex-partners that I'd had, in the sense that their family would always be number one, and you know, whereas I'm very much like, of course my family's number one, but I'm like traveling, I'm trying to I'm a very different sort of person than they are. They're people who except for my father when he was in the Marines, but they're not people who are traveling the world. They work locally all their life, very humble people and amazing parents, great role models, but very values driven. But you know, they always put me first and my needs, even though I wasn't great at school. They would be driving me everywhere across the country to play football matches. They'd be taking me to do sport, athletic. I was always good at sport as a kid. I was terrible at school, but sport, I just love competitive sport. And the same even today. You know, I hate gyms, contrary to popular belief. Although I have to go to a gym, I can't think of anything worse than standing in a gym doing weights or whatever. I like sport. There's got to be, to me, a winner and a loser sort of thing. I don't know. It's the way I'm wired. And it doesn't matter if it's a game of pool or a badminton or a football match or anything. I just, game of darts. I want to like see if I can.
You want to win?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds really bad, but
I
can remember. Do you know, it was probably about 6 years ago now. I was on my daughter's sports day, and I remember the head teacher. He heard me like giving her a bit of a brief. And he came over and told me off, because I was basically going against it. It's the taking part that counts and all that. You know what they say in schools. I was like, no, you want to win this. I was like, if you're competing in this race, you're racing to win. And I genuinely still believe that. You know, and I volunteer with kids like cadets and scouts every day, and I think there is a lot of growth that comes from competitive sport, and not only from winning though, but from losing. That teaches us about failure. It teaches us that, you know, we need to, if we want to be better, we've got to try harder, we've got to train harder, we've got to work harder. So I'm like, I believe that winning is a great thing, but also losing is teaches us some great lessons. So, but if you play anything, for me, you play to win. It's not about it's never about the taking part.
Did you do the dad's race, Jordan?
I did. There wasn't a dad's race, unfortunately, but I turned up in my running spikes, ready for it.
Of course you did. You've done some amazing adventurous stuff. For those listening that don't know, can you list some of them? And also, again, that hyper focus must have helped with so many situations that you've been in.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I just love adventures and going to places that a lot of people don't maybe want to or don't get the opportunity to. But yeah, from some of them would be like, you know, trying to paddleboard around Great Britain, trying to be the first person to paddleboard around Great Britain. I was on the water for 5 months, paddling, 10 marathons in the 10 coldest places on the planet, including, you know, Antarctica, climbing Kilimanjaro with no shoes on, a project called Barefoot Warrior, rowing across a very dangerous stretch of water. We still got the Guinness World Record with the Army Cadets for the deepest underground marathon, 1,000 meters below the North Sea in a mine. So yeah, lots of weird and wacky ones. But I also would say to people that you don't have to do something crazy or go to the other side of the world to have an amazing adventure. I think adventure is a spirit that's in all of us, especially young people. I think you can have the best adventures in your back garden if you're creative and if you're, you know, in COVID and things like that. I had some great adventures in my garden, building dens with my family or whatever. So it's adventure is an approach to life. It's about, you know, being prepared to take a chance, take a risk, and see where the world takes you. I don't think you have to do a crazy big expensive expedition. You know, that's a very different type, I think.
Yeah, we'll leave that to you.
Something that motivates you, that kind of means something to
you. Exactly, absolutely.
You spoke a bit about working with the Army Cadets. You're an ambassador to them now. Is it important for you to help young people? Because I suppose many of those that you'll be working with will have neurodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for me, it's probably, yeah, I'm very lucky to be asked to be, like a patron or a trustee of lots of ambassador for lots of charities and good causes and youth groups. But the Army Cadets is probably like the proudest cap that I wear, just because I think when I see a lot of the cadets, I relate to them, especially when I go to visit like detachments in, obviously in where I'm back home in Blackpool or Liverpool, Manchester, and London suburbs. A lot of what would be considered like challenging areas or deprived villages or towns where opportunities can sometimes be few and far between. The cadets does amazing work, and it allows it creates, going back to that, it creates an environment where people who may not normally get opportunities can flourish. And things like adventure training, taking them on expeditions, giving them the discipline that you would get from like teaching them drill or fieldcraft, teaching them values like courage and respect and integrity, loyalty, discipline, all those core values that for me will take you a lot further in life than any form of education or experience. If you can, I often say to young people that values are like the best decision making tool that you can carry with you everywhere. It's like an armory of that will help you to make good or sometimes bad decisions. But it doesn't mean you're always going to get everything right if you've got good values, but it means that you can quickly get back on track and learn, hopefully, from what you've got wrong. So I think the Army Cadets is like one of the best kept secrets in the UK. Really, it's amazing, incredible organisation.
But it goes back to what you were saying right at the very beginning when I asked you about your confidence, because when you're when you're in education and things are not easy for you and there's a lot of kind of negative messaging, building that self-belief in another way is really important. And I think there's so many parents that are just trying to find how to do that for their children when the education system for many children is just not working. And like my son's 4, so he's really young, but it's likely that he has ADHD. It's a kind of watch at this moment in time. But even I think like he finds school quite difficult even at this point. Like, so how do I build those kind of skills of self-belief, confidence, resilience when at school that's not something that he's getting from that environment at all?
Yeah, it's very tough, isn't it? And that's like what I was saying, I guess, about my own school experiences at the start. And I think that's where, your job as a parent perhaps becomes even more important than a lot of parents out there, in the sense that you're going to have to reinforce those skills through trial and error. But again, things like the outdoors, getting them into outdoors at the early age, like these forest schools and things like that. I think they're it's only my opinion, but I think they're much more powerful than anything you're going to learn in a book still. Take getting your child into physical activities as well from a young age. Things like a lot of the problems like healthy eating, obesity, all these link back to half the things that we're talking about, and depression and that sort of thing. But I think, yeah, as a parent, we're all trying to be the best role model that we can be. But when you've got a child that has got some kind of neurodiverse challenges from an early age, maybe that's a positive, because then they're not going to go the whole life waiting for a diagnosis like a lot of people will. If you can help them and harness that from an early age, I think they're going to be in a better position than a lot of people because they're hopefully not going to have to make all those mistakes that most of us make and learn lessons the hard way in life. But yeah, I can't profess to having the answers to that. To be honest, it's not easy, but even by doing what you're doing now, though, with things like the podcast and talking about it, removing all those stigmas that people might have attached to them, I think is great and very positive for sure.
Yeah, we're in a situation where Alex isn't quite fitting the mold of mainstream school, and we're going to have to start looking for a specialist provision sort of for later on in his education. But then you look at specialist schools, and I guess the benefit of those is sort of what you've been talking about, is that they're tailored to each individual need, and then they're learning how to, cook and clean and dress themselves and, go and do like a little job, which in the scheme of things, like you were saying, they're more important than trying to sit in a classroom.
I can honestly tell you that in 41 years, I've never been asked how you do like a Pythagoras or an algebra or how you use it. I've never used a Bunsen burner, funnily enough, either in my life.
Nor have I, to be fair.
No, but I have learned, like how you go shopping, how you pay for a bill, how you all these things that what they're going to use. It's like that's why the cadets and scouts. Yeah, do you know the cadets especially? I meet children all the time that have done terrible at school. Some of them have neurodiverse challenges, some don't. Some are just naughty kids or whatever they might want to call them. But some of them, those kids often are the best cadets. They're the ones who really flourish. They're the ones. I met a young cadet in London, 14 years old. He'd been kicked out of his school. He'd been in trouble with the police, and I resonated a lot with his story. But what was interesting for me is that I'd read the sort of the report of his expelling from his school, and when I met this particular kid on parade at his detachment at 7:00 on a Tuesday night in London, it was like reading a report about someone who was the extreme opposite of this kid. This kid was like the smartest, the most well-mannered, the one who was so respectful, the one who would put his hand out with confidence and introduce himself to me. And I thought, that can't be the kid. This is like a different person. And for me, that again highlighted the educational system issues that we have, that someone who won't go to school or can't go to school or has been kicked out of school is the same kid that is the smartest on parade, is on time and can't wait to learn the skills that the cadets is going to teach him. There's something wrong. The education system is wrong there, in the sense that kid's got the potential, it's ready to be unlocked, but whatever this is over here is not working for this kid.
It's not the right environment.
It's not the right environment.
It's like putting a sunflower in the shade. They're not gonna flourish.
They're not going to flourish and grow. No, and same for me. I was the same as that kid when I was that age, and luckily for me, I joined the army at 16, and the same, like the cadets, the same values, the same sort of structure in many ways. That's what sort of taught me the right way and the right path. It was a better education, and hopefully by the time your kids get to their teens and things, there'll be better provisions. We'd hope that the education system's better, but we can't live in hope. We've got to prepare for it now, like you're doing, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. What advice do you kind of give to young people who you come into contact who have ADHD or various other neurodiversities, or feel like they might have ADHD? What's the message that you give them? My message,
regardless of if you've got ADHD or any neurodiversity, it's the same message as I would give to any child out there. I call it, actually, I'm a simple guy, me, from Blackpool, so I call it my ABC rule. So Jordan's ABC rule is, firstly, A is for attitude, regardless of where you come from, who you are, education, school, all that palaver. If you've got the right attitude, you will go far in life. Don't be a victim. Anyone can be a victim if they want to be. We can all find an excuse. We can all have a sob story. Have the right attitude. And most of the time, in my experience, if you've got a good, positive attitude, can-do attitude, people will always give you a chance. They will always give you a chance, even if you're not the best or you're not the right candidate. If you've got the right attitude and you're positive, genuinely, people will give you a chance. B is build relationships everywhere you go. You meet the most interesting people from talking to people, and a lot of the opportunities in life, especially my life, have come from the most unexpected places. So always be open to talking to new people, meeting new people, different backgrounds, different cultures. Build relationships, so important. And C is for continued professional development. And I say that not all classrooms have four walls. And it goes back to attitude and having an open mind for learning. Whether you're at home, sat around the dinner table, whether you're on the sports field, these are all opportunities for education, not necessarily sat in a classroom with a textbook. So attitude, build relationships, and continue professional development. Never stop learning.
Love that. Thank you so much, Jordan. Honestly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to us.
Thank you for inviting
your
me.
Experience. And if anyone wants to get in touch or find out more, where can they find your info?
Yeah, my website is jordanwylie.org, and my social channels are at Mr. Jordan Wylie. Very grateful for any support, and a new book came out this week as well, called Future Proof. So I'd be rude not to plug that on your podcast, wouldn't I?
Absolutely. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so Future Proof actually is very in theme with what we've just been talking about, because it's actually a not-for-profit project. It's a book that I wrote for for teenagers, actually, using the Army Cadets core values. It's called Future Proof: How to Navigate Life Through Values, and all the proceeds go to the Army Cadet charity. But it's a bit of a passion project, but I've used the core values to sort of talk about, how I've used them, but how I've made mistakes and learned from them, and how values, as I said earlier, will be one of the best decision-making tools that we have, and will always sort of a bit like a compass guide us on the right path when we need them.
Amazing. And where can we purchase the book?
If you purchase it from the Army Cadet charity online, Act UK, all the proceeds will go to charity. If you purchase it from Amazon, some publisher will get all the money. My publisher won't be happy with me saying that, but I'm trying to promote the charity.
Jordan, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. Keep up the great work, ladies. Amazing work.
Thank you.